Hi, my name's Alphie. I'm Sales Director over at Hackstons and one of the founders here. If you've made it this far, it's probably because you're considering investing or purchasing a cask of whisky, either for enjoyment or for the growth value. Now, naturally, we've seen there's been a decent amount of negativity out in the press recently. And what we like to do is hit things head on and explain what we're doing at Hackstons to make sure that your purchase is done in the correct way, we're fully transparent, and that you have a good, seamless relationship with us throughout. Today I'm joined with two of the account managers. I'm here with Sam and I'm here with Ricky. We're going to go from start to finish through the process that we adopt and sort of the risks out there as well as the way we counteract it. So let's begin. Let's start off with the initial discovery. So for me, the initial discovery is always about qualifying the client and making sure that they are right to be investing into or purchasing a cask of whiskey. And ultimately we are the right organisation for them. So if you just talk to them a bit about the types of things that you look for, that you're doing on the initial discovery call.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's part and parcel when you're starting a relationship, right? It's not just jumping straight into the transaction. It's wanting to understand where someone's at, what their experience is, why they're looking at this asset in the first place, and then getting a feel as to whether we're the right fit for them and they're the right fit for us. So it's just through a number of conversations, whether that be over the phone, in person, or on things like Zoom, and then we get a better understanding of who we're working with and what we can potentially put their way.
I think for me, the first initial contact with the client is my favourite, because you can only make a first impression once. So really getting to know about them, about why they're looking at this, as you said, Rick. But more than anything, making that first impression and ensuring that I'm the sort of person that they would want to work with. Hackstons is the sort of company that they'd want to operate with long term, and everything's relationship based. So for me, that first call is really pivotal, I would say.
I think the key thing that both of you guys have touched on just then is the long-term nature of this asset. Like, obviously we want to onboard the client quickly and we want to onboard as many clients and build the business. That's quite obvious.
Yeah.
But what we can't mistake is that there are organisations out there that will have no client care, no process in place, and it's just about name, number, let's get you through the door. Very, very harsh sales tactics and no face, no method of the client being able to come and verify who they're speaking to is the actual person. And meet and interact with that person. Whereas with us, we are on the front foot. We always say that we want you to come to the stores, come to our head office, actually meet the account managers, look us in the eye, get to understand what we're about as people as well, and we like to do that in the initial discovery call. Right.
I think for me, I had some really great feedback from a newly onboarded client just this week, and he's really impressed with the way that he went through the process. And I think it's important to speak about this today because I think that is really what attracted him to us. Done his research before speaking to us over the last kind of 6-8 months before he even became a client. I met him here at the store on a Saturday. Got my day off, but I love it. It's such a great store to come to, and he was really impressed. We enjoyed a few drams of whiskey on a Saturday afternoon, and yeah, I mean the feedback that kind of top line he gave to us was that we're thorough, but we're also there's no real pressure, and building relationship was very important to him, and I think that's what we want to exude here. Certainly me as well.
Yeah, I agree completely. So after the initial discovery with one of the account managers, we move on to a stock presentation. Typically what you're looking to get out of the stock presentation?
Well, it's not a one size fits all, so that's the thing, right? So because it's an on-demand market, we'll have an allocation of casks that we've procured, we've got in bond, we're not trying to go and broker them. Everything we talk about we already have. So it's understanding somebody's budget, timescales, whether it's for them, for next generations, and then we'll look at building something that's either a single cask purchase or a collection, depending on what they're looking for and how much they're looking to purchase.
Yeah, I can completely agree. Nice, concise overviews of the presentation. I mean, for me, I'm a whiskey enthusiast, so that's my job. That's the exciting bit of my job. Speaking about the stock that we've got, going into a bit of the history. I'm a bit of a history nerd, so speaking about the background of all these distilleries, I've got such a great story. Everyone's got its own character. Every distillery's got its own journey it's been on, and being able to kind of present that in an interesting, exciting way makes it a little bit more exciting, I suppose, than more I suppose, more traditional investments, where just numbers on a screen. You know, everything's got a character, and it's important to be a part of that distiller's history, which I think is the fun part of the investment.
And I completely second what both of you have said. I think if we're thinking and focusing on what the client has to avoid, it's the fact that there are some risks when talking about stock, right?
Yeah.
The common risks are people purchasing stock that they don't own. Another common risk in the market, unfortunately, is trade stock. So for the new viewer who is sort of entering this market, how would you describe trade stock, Ricky, and the dangers of, let's say, accidentally purchasing that, or purchasing it without knowing what you're buying?
Yeah, so we've seen it over the last few years that some companies, stroke competitors, they can be a bit cute with their wording. So they can look at a particular whiskey that's distilled at a particular location, but it may not be classified or can't have the naming rights of being the headline brand. So there is trade stock, which you just got to be very wary about the paperwork and the presentation of what you're actually purchasing. So if it's distilled at, what is the actual name of that whiskey? Does it have naming rights? Is there any covenants on what can be used when that liquid is bottled?
The conditions, right?
Correct, yeah.
There's some conditions with some casks whereby the next person who owns it has to bottle it. Are you fully aware of that? Because if bottling isn't your intention and you've bought a cask that has a condition on it like that, or you can't use the full name or the main name of the distillery, then naturally that affects the price, you know.
And the market.
And the market, exactly that. Plenty of times we've been told by various different suppliers that we work with that stock that has restrictions or trade names typically costs a fraction.
Correct.
Of that with full naming rights, which is what we offer to all of our clients.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important point to make, definitely, because so many of my clients have their portfolio structured in a way with us in whisky where it's either, you know, to bulk up the portfolio and, you know, be part of a pension plan or whatever have you, but a lot of it's passion projects. You know, they want to bottle it, they want to enjoy it, and comes with that, we want to make sure that anything that we have in stock and we're selling is, as we say, it's got those naming rights. It's something that they either enjoy or they're quite passionate about, and that's something that's definitely important to us as it is our clients.
Excellent. And I think another thing just to touch on there is price, right? Recently, you've seen it in the media, there's been some unfortunate victims that have purchased things if they've not owned it, or they've paid 10 times the price of that cask, then naturally the chances of them making money, especially within the predicted timeframes that have been said, a year, 18 months, let's face it, it's just not going to happen. So a couple of ways we combat that, we know. First thing that we look at is all the clients we work with, they typically think 10 years. The mandatory with us is 5 years, we know that, but they typically think 10 years or longer. Some of it's legacy building. Yeah. I know you've got a client that said that he's not actually going to see the proceeds of his cask, and he's not an old gentleman. No. He's not an old gentleman, to say the least. So that's the way that these we set up, to say the least. But when it comes to price, the way we look at things is we look at, with a backward-facing model, we always look at what's fair and what will allow the client to make money over the period that we are working with, quite naturally. We look at what's out in the market, what those bottles are selling for, because the ultimate destination of a whiskey cask is, like we have in the store, it's to be bottled and then enjoyed by someone at some point. So we look at what's out in the market, what's currently being sold, work backwards and make sure that we price into that. The client obviously being able to hold for a period of time and make profit. I think another thing that we have to say and really discuss and talk about is the commission, right? A lot of entities will just say they take a commission on the back end, and we just know that business, that is unrealistic. We all know that, right? Yeah. We have an operational margin naturally to build the business, to keep the lights on, keep growing, as you'd want any successful company to have. And I think it's always really important just to state that and let the clients know what they're walking into. You are walking into a long-term hold, and by having and adopting that mindset, to say the least, you're in the best position to do well at the market, to say the least.
I think naturally the most important, I mean, anybody who's ever purchased anything, you know that you're not buying it at the price that the company purchased it from. You know, there's obviously wholesalers and so forth. You know, whiskey's not indifferent to that. But naturally, you know, all of my clients who have kind of really taken a step back and understood that, the lower that we can negotiate a price down on casks on the front end when it's sold to the client, and we can maximise the profits on the back end, well, we're going to do that because it serves them and it serves us. You know, the client can win and so can we, naturally.
And that's a big thing for us, right? To make sure that the client does win. You know, we're entering into a contractual agreement whereby 5 years or longer, the client, if they're looking for it for growth, they make a return out of the market. Now, obviously, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't account for black swan events, but we always want to make sure the client has the best opportunity to do well and exceed any prediction or anything that we've seen in the market already, to say the least. So once the allocation has been agreed between yourself and us as Hackstons, we then have a process where we go through compliance, which is a bit more of a framework to make sure that the client is of sound mind and it is something that they know exactly what they're walking into. So if you just talk about the compliance aspect before parting with any capital.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those final stages before you're entering into a contractual agreement to purchase your casks. It's a really important process for us, that framework. It's a way that we can have a scripted call with the client where we ensure that they're aware of the time frame, what they pay us on the back end, ensuring that they're not borrowing capital and all the other types of things that maybe a company who had the wrong intentions would try and encourage. So for our protection and for the client's protection, it's for them to understand that there is a recorded call that is used for training and quality purposes, so that they know that the company has got their best intentions and we are aware that they are entering into an agreement for a period of time.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's an important, I would say, pivotal part of the sales process. And again, I'm going to use feedback from clients that have been with me for a few years and clients that are quite new to it. The clients that are quite new to it and have heard it for the first time really appreciate it. The clients that have heard it a few times, it can be a bit autonomous. It is a scripted call. It's probably the less exciting part of the sales process, but it's important, you know. And again, the top line feedback that I get from all clients is they really appreciate ensuring that they're being looked after. You know, some of the questions in that script are key. You're not borrowing money. Again, you have sound mind. We've acted in a professional manner. I think those are all important factors, and it just ensures that we're entering into a long-term relationship with our best foot forward. And
eyes, I think for the client, their eyes fully open as to what we're about. Yeah. So once they've gone through the compliance, we know the next step is a deposit. We use a Stripe platform, take 10% as a deposit, whereby that deposit is held against a specific cask that on completion and full balance is paid, they will now owe. Yeah. The way that we also operate as well, we offer storage and insurance. Our storage and insurance is highest echelon. We've got racking systems, which is, you know, probably best for you, Ricky, to just explain a tiny bit. I know you came with me to one of the warehouses. We've done an experience with clients. They got to see the racking system, roll their casks in. Yeah. Just talk a bit about that.
Yeah, the racking system in a warehouse for individual cask owners basically just gives them the best possible option for maturation of spirit, because if it's palletized, which is another way that you can store casks, which is fine, but if you're doing it on volume as a drinks brand, then you can probably price into your thinking that there might be issues with certain casks 7 rows back, 8 rows high, that you won't be able to health check on a regular basis.
Of course.
When the casks are in a racking system, they're on their side, they're in a specific location that can be monitored for leakage, everything. So it just gives the client the best possible chance to mature that liquid for a longer period than if it was, say, in a palletized warehouse.
I think the easiest way to imagine, I mean, we've all got access to Google, but pallets, you know, just stacked on top of each other, and it really is 7 rows high, 8 rows back.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking long term, the actual kind of pressures that can be felt if your cask's at the bottom or second from bottom, 10, 15 years of pressure, you know, you can't really guarantee, well, you can't guarantee anything, but you can't guarantee it's not going to be damage in that time frame or leakage. So I was really impressed seeing the difference between palletization and the racking systems in some of the warehouses that we use, and just optimizing airflow. It's easy to spot leakages. I suppose it's state of the art, right? It's top line in terms of what we can offer in terms of storage.
And I think it's really important to highlight, if you are thinking about purchasing a cask for any reason, one of the, I would say, real risks once you've got past the ownership and you know you own the cask is the fact that you've got something that reacts to temperature, right? And when we were discovering and working with various different warehouse partners, we understood that anywhere between 4 to 10% of casks will have damage at some part in their journey or will be completely leaked. And without the necessary precautions in place, that is the risk you're taking. You know, if you've got 2 casks and one of them is in adverse storage conditions and ultimately leaks out, that's it. It's game over without the right conditions in place. So one of the things that we obviously did is make sure that we've got warehouse partners that are committed. It's not just a job for them. They really, for them, there's something they're really passionate about, and we've been able to show that in some of the events that we've done. But I think another thing is the bespoke insurance policy that we've got. You know, we know that some companies out there will say the insurance you have is either 10 years free, or they'll use it as a hook and a reel, right? And when we've looked at some of these policies, the insurance is it's very, very basic. Typically, what you need to look out for is the insurance just to cover the leakage. Well, it's the VAT and duty owed to the HMRC if your cask leaks, because we all know that the HMRC aren't as forgiving. You know, they still want their pound of flesh. They want their duty if the cask leaks. So a lot of the warehouses will offer storage, and then with their storage offer insurance that just covers the HMRC's VAT and duty. But what happens if you've held that for 15 years, it was a legacy, maybe a personal present for somebody you really care about, and you come and it's you know, it's half leaked or fully leaked. You know, so what we've done is we've taken out a policy. It's underwritten by Lloyd's of London. The company cover everything from damage, fire, theft, and the main thing, which everyone always gets a laugh at, is it's a mysterious disappearance, right? We know that if your cask was to completely leak, the cask will be replaced up to £100,000.
And we've seen it a few times.
And we have seen it a few times. I think last year there was 26 different occasions where casks had either been damaged or leaked considerably, and it was no fuss. The client was told, and they were either offered in every single actual occasion they were offered a like for like that was actually better. You know, either bigger in size and volume or slightly better finish. So it was advantageous for them to have that policy. And naturally, that's something that you've genuinely got to be aware of, because if you're not thinking that way and you're purchasing a cask, and ideally you want to get on with your life, 10 years down the line, you don't want to walk into a situation whereby your investment or your purchase has leaked out.
And I believe you used the word that kind of really just exudes everything that was about Hackstons, which was bespoke, you know, or tailored to the individual. But when I say bespoke, I mean the storage is bespoke. You know, we're trying to have those little 1%ers where you know, it's a real world asset. It's not just a number on the screen.
Exactly.
If we can add any little bit of value along the way, whether it's the best type of storage to ensure that every cask has the best opportunity to mature long term in the best of conditions, we're going to do that. In terms of the bespoke insurance, just ensuring that they're entirely looked after, we're going to do that as well. So it's just those little things that can make a huge difference, especially for clients, like you say, a legacy building or 15, 20 years down the line. They want to make sure that they've been given the greatest opportunity for that time period.
And I think it's really important that we do just state that you need to think, is the organisation you're working with, are they thinking about the long term? That's something that I'm really considering. Like, is it just sell you a cask, which, you know, some people that, you know, they're happy with, buy their cask and they'll do what they want with it. But if you're actually thinking of 360, does the organisation and entity have the ability to be able to actually do that?
Yeah.
You know, so you've arrived at a place where you've purchased the cask, gone through the process, gone through compliance, paid the deposit, set up your direct debit mandate, so you know it's all stress-free. You know that you own the cask on paper. We understand that if there's fraud in this market, the fraud comes from all you have is paper certification. Now, something we did in the inception of Hackstons, which was actually suggested to one of us by, well, it's one of our account managers, by an ex-police officer who was quite high up at New Scotland Yard. The audit system is what we put in place, which just talk through very briefly so people can understand what we've initially done to give extra confidence at a cost to ourselves, and then I can talk to where we're now transitioning to go to.
Sure. So yeah, we put in place an auditing system where we had an external company come and check every cask that was purchased by clients to ensure that it hadn't been sold to anyone else It was there, it was real, and the conditions were the age and the brand and everything married up with what the clients had on paper. So it was a sort of stepping stone to what you're about to discuss now, but it was from a third party who put their sort of public indemnity insurance on the line to confirm every asset that our clients have purchased up until that point were real, they exist, and more importantly, they haven't been sold to 10 people over.
And I think the reason why we had to do that was because there's this archaic system and process in place in Scotland with a lot of the facilities and warehouses whereby they like to deal with corporations and organisations that have thousands of casks rather than individuals that have one or two.
Yeah.
Now, since WALGO's been abolished, there are a few warehouses that are opening up accounts for individuals, and the way that we are looking to combat and give full transparency, full ownership to our clients unquestionably is that we have now found a warehouse partner that's in Glenrothes in Fife, and we're going to be transferring all of our clients' stock at a cost to ourselves from the various 35 different warehouses where we store casks, which are in some very remote areas, some of them, into this one central location in Glenrothes in Fife, and then we'll be able to open up individual accounts for our clients and provide them with a delivery order. Now, for those who are wondering what is the delivery order and how does it actually work, well, the delivery order is a piece of documentation that is between the current owner and the new owner, where the stock is lying, right? So it's been a bit tricky, and I'm going to explain this in the most succinct manner as I can, but typically when you are working with a warehouse, to be able to give a delivery order, both entities have to have an account at the warehouse. So you couldn't have stock and I transfer it into your account without me having an account at the same warehouse for you, right? Hence the reason why we're marrying all of our client stock into one area. But as soon as that happens, what we'll be doing is assisting all of our clients in opening up their individual accounts, which is all done via AML. And then what will happen is once the account is open, the stock will be transferred from their company account where it's sitting in and lying in now into their own individual account, at which point the warehouse keeper will acknowledge it, that's the delivery order, and then ultimately the client can request a stock report which will give them full details of what's in their account, all the cask details, how it's lying. We can register them with the vapor system, which gives them full transparency and ownership of their cask. That's something that we are working on within the next 6 to 12 months, ideally. Obviously, we're moving thousands of casks in various different locations. There is a movement that has to happen. It can be a bit of a logistical nightmare, and also we have to protect those casks, right, in transit. So that's something we're doing over the next 6 to 12 months. Our clients who are with us understand that it is a logistical nightmare, but it's something that we want to do so that the client has full confidence in knowing whatever happens, they're the single owner of their cask.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably the most important, or one of, I would say, the most important parts of cask ownership, having the absolute pinnacle of sole ownership, having that delivery order, which is something that every company should be working towards, and it's something obviously we've been endeavouring to work towards for a few years now. I've had some funny conversations with clients around delivery orders. I've had clients in Germany and Sweden saying, no, I don't want to have my cars delivered to my house. I haven't got room for it. Sam, I'd like to have a whiskey barrel in my front room, but I drink the entire content. So, but yeah, it's obviously not having it delivered to the home. It's obviously official documentation that is the absolute pinnacle for cask ownership, right?
Yeah.
Okay, once you've gone through the process with us, you've gone through the initial consultation, stock presentation, compliance, deposits paid via the Stripe platform, you've then had your certificate sent to you, understand the delivery order process, the warehouse. The next thing is the fun part of what we're able to offer. We're not faceless individuals, right? I think it's really important in a industry where there can be some people that hide in the shadows, that we're at the forefront of come and see us. Either previously to owning this beautiful space that we're all very, very proud of, it was events, taking them up to Scotland, warehouse tours, distillery tours, lunches with the clients, which we're still continuing, but now obviously with this asset here and the ability to educate clients, actually showing this is what your cask can potentially be. If it's not you, it's going to be somebody who's going to bottle this and it's going to be sold in places like this,
I
right?
mean, not even potentially. I mean, it will be.
Yeah, exactly.
It will be sold and it will be drunk.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Especially by people like you, right? So no, I think it's really good that we're able to go through the process. And my idea for having this conversation and sit down with a couple of the account managers was just to shed some light as to what you should be cautious of, but more importantly, what Hackstons offer and what we're going to continue to offer, regardless of any market condition, to make sure that you are taking advantage in the right way. But as always, if there's any further questions or anything that you'd like to discuss, the account manager is always on hand to discuss that with you at your leisure. So thank you very much for your time today. I think what we would like to do now is just summarise the key takeaways. What I really want you to do is just put yourself in the shoes of the client, the person who's thinking about purchasing whiskey. What do they need to look out for? What do they actually need to be aware of?
I mean, for me, we live in a world where we get constant information, constantly told about the next big thing, and as humans, most people want to make big returns quickly, right? So sometimes companies in our industry will use that sort of hook to try and bring business in, the allure of making quick wins. But realistically, that's not going to happen in whiskey. So you've got to get used to and familiar with the company that you're going to be working with. There's going to be a long-term relationship, right? 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is. So make sure that from your initial contact, you're not under any pressure to do something at a pace that you're not comfortable with. Get an idea of who you're working with, put a face to a name if possible.
But more to that point, any entity that is looking to have a 10, 15, 20-year relationship with you should be able to meet you. So for me, we know that there are companies that just work with a virtual office, right? We regularly encourage every single client to first do a Zoom with us, then come to our office in the Gherkin, or physically come to this retail outlet at Knightsbridge. Right? We want the FaceTime with the client to make sure that they are comfortable with us, because we are talking about the long term.
Absolutely.
What would you say your key takeaways are?
Yeah, and the big thing I would say is if I'm putting myself in the client's shoes, I want to make sure I'm being spoken to as an individual, I'm being listened to, and really we've got kind of two types of clients. What I do certainly, clients who are looking at just an investment, another investment pin in an overall board of investment portfolio, or passionate people who want to buy interesting casks and give away as gifts and so forth. So making sure that if I'm asking questions as a client or potential client, that I'm being listened to, my questions are being answered, I'm not being pressured, as you say, Rick, into anything that maybe I didn't want to do, and making sure that if I am working with somebody long term, I am happy to work with them, not just for 5 or 10 years, but maybe longer, and legacy building. Is this the individual, the company that I want to look after me 360 degrees? From the filling of the cask to the management to eventually being bottled. Because if it's not me, if it's my kids, I want to make sure that they're in safe hands.
Yeah,
I think that's a big thing.
So as a takeaway, obviously the client should be thinking long term. The questions they should not be afraid to ask is, can I see you? Can I meet you? Can I spend some time with you? Get to know who you are. With regards to the cask, what is the cask? Like in its entirety, am I buying first name stock or am I buying trading stock? Can you provide me with assurances that the stock is mine by way of a delivery order? If not now, are you working towards that? What time frame? And then the continuation, can I continue to have a relationship with you? How can I immerse myself if it's community that I'm looking for? Would you say there's anything else?
No, absolutely. And that last point that you made, the community, the events that we're hosting, some of the collaborations, I think, you can just own a cask and you can forget about it for 15 years, but so many of our clients love the events, they love meeting other clients, us, being in the Knightsbridge store. So I think that's really something that kind of set us apart. But if it's not Hackstons, then just making sure those questions are answered, absolutely.
Totally agree. So to summarise, I feel that the key takeaways that you must be asking if you're thinking about purchasing cask whisky is, first, can I be in it for the long term? Secondly, what cask am I actually purchasing? Am I buying something that is trade stock? Are there any conditions with that stock, or are they full naming rights with 0 conditions? Once you've purchased the stock, what proof is there that you own that cask. The ultimate proof is by way of delivery order, right? And then once you've got that delivery order, can you interact with the cask? We know that a lot of clients like to actually go up and visit, see their cask, sign their cask, especially if they're thinking of legacy building. And then finally, am I with an organisation that I personally feel will be there for the long term to see me through the full 360? So that's what we believe, and if it's not with Hackstons, then definitely have the confidence to ask those questions. Thank you for watching.